Hi everyone, my name is Deepshikha and I work with Nature Conservation Foundation. This is the chapter of Snow Leopard Trust, and we work in the high altitude region in the northern parts of India for conserving snow leopard habitats, and we closely work with communities. So quickly, I'll just share the geography with you. You might be able to see the top map and might be familiar with it. It is the potential snow leopard habitat across the world. And India kind of lies in the periphery of that habitat, of that range. And that means we have lower densities of snow leopards and prey population. But nevertheless, we do have a considerable amount of snow leopard habitat as well as populations in this landscape. I will be talking about one particular state that I've been working with for past 4 years, and it's called the state of Himachal Pradesh. It is in the north, and as you can see in the lower map, it's about 50% of the state is kind of the potential snow leopard habitat. We have 4 states in India and 2 UTs, which can have snow leopards, and we are currently under the process of counting these, actually having the population estimation through across India. And in the state of Himachal, we have about 26,000 square kilometers of area, which is the potential snow leopard habitat. The circle that you see there is one of the primary regions that we have been engaging with. It's called the Spiti Valley, and it's one of the first regions that we went out and started our work about 25 years ago. And more on that I'll probably cover in the timeline. So we kind of started our work around 1996, between 1996 and 2000. And a lot of the research and the interventions that we put in place in Spiti Valley came around the following decade. We had from grazing free reserves to insurance programs to engaging with children, teachers, and so a lot of the work and even intervention for research, for example, camera trapping work, long-term camera trapping work, raptor monitoring, bird monitoring, kind of started around that, or at least the ideas were circulated around that time. And the following decade was around and this was primarily in Spiti Valley, and it started, the first kind of the decade we spent was in Spiti Valley. And it's a small valley. It has around 100 villages. And we began from one village in Kibber and spread across the Spiti Valley, and kind of really took forward our interventions in these areas and our research in these areas. It was easy to spread around in Spiti Valley because of the context, similarity of landscape. People were very similar to each other, the cultures, the traditions. And we kind of understood that quite closely and observed that quite closely. So it was quite easy. And even by then, people had kind of come to know of our work and what our intentions were. And it was pretty okay to move around in the valley. But in the next decade, we also thought of really moving out of Spiti and seeing where else we can kind of take our work forward. And we had other areas contiguous to Spiti, which were potentially good habitats, but very little was known of them, was studied of them. So around 2013, between 15, we were very actively engaging in surveys. We did occupancy surveys and threat analysis, which kind of also showed, that there were potentially very good habitats for snow leopards, but very little work was happening there. And there was a lot of threat that people were facing, and so were the snow leopards. With that survey, we also then that's kind of segued into our pause work. We started population assessment of formally the population assessment of snow leopards around 2016-17, and this was a good way for us to engage with those new areas that we are talking about. Our teams went out to put camera traps in 10 different locations. These are like really huge regions, each comprising of a few tens of villages. And these wherever we went, wherever we engaged, we spoke with the village. We told them about our work. We told them about snow leopards. Many of them did not know about this animal. So it was really a primary engagement with the communities, and they understood of our work a little bit more than before, and they always associated us with, oh, you guys were the ones who put cameras. So they kind of understood our research and things like that. So following that, we had about 2-3 years of really visiting this landscape and talking to people. Our sole purpose was to know more of the landscape, people, and their conflict with the animals, predators, especially wolves and snow leopards. We also found out that there was a lot of more conflict with bears in some regions. So that was mainly what our work starting 2018-19 was. We also had a chance to, because some of the primary results of analysis work and results were coming out of the pause work, we were able to take some of that work and share with the communities. And like I said, people, as you know, very easily recognized us, and even if we were different people, they were like, yes, we know you were the ones who had put cameras. And they wanted to know more about the cameras, what happened with them. They wanted to know what are the animals that came in their landscape, to the point that some of them were even competitive about, oh, that village had more animals, we should have had, you didn't place the cameras properly, and things like that. So it was a nice way to, go back to communities and have those interactions, small interactions, and kind of understand where they're coming from, what is the current situation with the conflict. And we took our time with that because we wanted to really and slowly understand the communities and not rush into it. And it also kind of speaks about our work when we did for pause, which was, we ensured wherever we went, we spoke with the communities. We told them or clearly told them of our intentions. And even while removing the cameras, we went back to the community and said, all the cameras have been removed. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So that, and because of that kind of interactions and, close working with the community during pause kind of helped us move to these landscapes a little bit more easily than we would have otherwise gone into. So the whole topic for today is what I'm going to talk about is around 2019-20 is when our program kind of took a shift and a turn toward change the direction a little bit. And although we were engaging with communities, we were having very close discussions with them. They were involved as much in our interventions. But what we did around that time was we started looking at our program a little bit more differently, and how we wanted to involve people a little bit more closely than what we have been doing before, and more directly as well. So what we adopted was a people for conservation model, which was basically creating a network of people, network champions, as we call them. And these were locally located people in different regions who would, be our eyes and ears and help us really take our work forward, because we were realizing that there were areas which were being left behind, and there were limitations because of which we were not able to take our work forward. So what we created was this champions network. Like I said, these are people from within the landscape who are interested in wildlife, wanting they're just interested in doing good for the society. They want to work for the village, and they saw this as an opportunity. And threats from predators is a very real threat there, especially to the livestock. And having someone like a champion there who wants to do something for the community really helps us with our work and taking it forward to the next level. So I'll talk about the need. Very obviously, because of our work, our surveys that we had done in these landscapes, we had realized that we need to go out there and explore other regions which are very high threat and high density areas for snow leopards and people. And it more and more, this was also the time when we were a little bit bigger in Spiti, and people knew of our work a little bit from outside as well. So we would get news of incidents. But yeah, we didn't have enough means to get out there and at least for the long run and engage with the communities. So we were realizing that there were other areas which were currently under threat, and we needed to engage with the communities a little bit more closely. This areas we're talking about, like I said, Himachal alone has around 26,000 square kilometers of area potential habitat. And it's very vast, it's rugged, and it's very, very remote. For the longest, only past 2 years they have network. So before that, they didn't even have any kind of connectivity. So to get any information or just to travel to these places was 2 days worth of time for our communities and travel back. So it was quite tedious, and many of these regions also did get blocked by snow during some months. So it was not always possible to go to these areas, but there was real conflict. So we wanted to see how we can create a network which was very locally placed and could really help us out even when we were not present. Like I said, there was limitation of manpower, there was limitation of time. We had, and time not just in the sense of time for a team, but also the time that we had to respond to situations. So certain situations, especially if a snow leopard gets caught up in a corral, we really didn't have enough time to, take our sweet own time to respond to that. We had to be quick. But unfortunately, like I said, these areas were very far off sometimes, and to get to these places would take us time. To even know of the situation would take a few days. So anything could have happened at that time. So that was another limitation that we have. And information, like I said, not everything was coming in very quickly. There were incidents that we came to know of a month later, and we went back and we did do something about it, but at the same time, it wasn't the most immediate and the most responsive way to act. Then, yes, these local champions who would be from within the community were also going to be, locally located. They knew the local challenges, the conflicts, the culture, the society, the social setups. So they would be our, guides in those areas where they would set up the context for us, and we would just be there and take it forward from there. So, and they also had stake in the region. Like I said, some of them just wanted to do good for the society and the communities, especially young people. So they had a very considerable stake in the region for their own people. So that is what we kind of capitalized on. And the long process of that we had the luxury of in our 90s and the 2000s was the time really to actually sit with the communities and engage. But seeing the situation that we were facing and the need of the hour, we didn't have that kind of luxury anymore to take that long to build that that network with the community and that trust with the community. So we wanted from someone from the community who would kind of whom community already trusted, and we could just be work alongside them and move ahead. So that was primarily why we realized that we needed someone more locally placed in different regions that we were working in, and just take it forward from there. Um, yeah, and just to highlight here, I don't know if how many of you are familiar with partners principles, but what we have been doing through this is also looking at different aspects of partners principles. Partners principles are kind of a, kind of a framework that we work that we try to keep in mind while we are engaging with communities. It basically kind of stands for presence, aptness, respect, transparency, negotiation, empathy, responsiveness, and strategic planning. So this kind of presence and the aptness, the respect for the community, all of that came with like having a local context, and having local people from within the local community. And then there was definitely, whenever we engaged, we kind of try to maintain transparency and with that, with the local people came the empathy that, yes, this is what we need to do, and the reasons for it. So, and the responsiveness definitely was quicker, much easier, and much more reliable. Like they could rely on us, and we could rely on them. And that was something that we wanted to do, and we have been able to somewhat achieve. So how we did this was, like I said, in 2018 and 20s, we were going out there and really meeting with the people and, talking to them. And so we had kind of identified a few key informants who were there every time we went, and who were very active, who wanted to do more, talk more. So there were some people we handpicked that way. There were also villages where we had nobody. So we kind of just went out there and made an open call. Many people showed up, but then they asked how much are you going to pay? Well, this was a very volunteer-based work. So we told them really nothing. So many of them backed off, but then there were a few who stayed, who had, wanted to do more, learn more, mostly young people. And that way we have picked a few. So there were various mixes and matches of the way, we kind of selected people. And some people we already knew, and they didn't really need to do anything. They were just part of our champion network. So, and there were also a few people in the villages who were very entrepreneurial. So that really, again, they were just curious about everything. So that really helped us, tap their energies and take them on. So yeah, we were just looking out for people who are really champions within their own areas. And then we did kind of conducted a few workshops, a few rounds of trainings. And these workshops primarily consisted of some of the partners principle, like I talked about, how to engage with communities, what to do in situations when there was conflict, and pretty much getting them on board and telling them about our work, because like I said, most of these areas were also very new. And not many people knew of the work, and many of them did not even know much about the wildlife. So some sessions around that. So yeah, that was pretty much what we have been doing for now with them. We also try to keep in touch with them through WhatsApp. We have, channels, different WhatsApp channels with each of the groups in different regions. And we try to keep in touch through that. We also used to send some info bites, which was basically what they can do in situations, what is amazing about their landscape, why should we protect this, why should we protect that, and things like that. And it wasn't that big of a hit because it was very one-sided. So what we realized over the time was something that which worked much better was both-way communications. And we also have a hotline number, which is basically if there is an incident, they can call upon and just message or whatever. So this is more like information kind of a system where people call and ask for directions of how to apply for forest department compensation or what to do in this situation. So things like that. So that is also something very active. WhatsApp is active. We also, because these were very dedicated young people and wanted to, we wanted to kind of give them some incentives. We did cover all their costs that they were incurring because of us, if they were traveling because of us. That was all being covered. Apart from that, we thought we gave them cameras for some time. We were like, why don't you explore wildlife with this? We gave them binocs. We also kind of keep giving them something or the other. So that way we have kept them active and kind of give them incentives, not that they've asked for it, but it's a nice motivational tool and a gesture of saying thanks, every time we engage with our champions. And yeah, so that's what we have been doing. At the back end, how we operate, it really is, we have within our team. So like I said, we have very strong team based out of Kibber. It's a small village. It's one of the first village we engaged with. And we have 8 people there from there. And so within those 8 people, we have two for each landscape we have a coordinator. So we have 3 coordinators, and that they cover areas like Lahore is one landscape, Kinnaur, Upper Kinnaur is another landscape, and Spiti is the other landscape. So 3 landscapes which are either very far off from each other or very culturally different, have been kind of separated and kept as different landscapes. So we have landscape coordinators who kind of manage these champions, who keep in touch with them much more regularly, keep on talking to them about if there are incidents, if there are some scope of intervention. We also try to involve people, some of these champions, in our work. So if there is some long-term monitoring project going on, we invite them every time that's going to start, and we like, why don't you come and learn? And all that is done by our landscape coordinators. Any incidents that happen, they are the ones who are supposed to respond and ensure that things are taken care of. Any other interventions that are happening, suppose if we are reinforcing some corrals or doing some education camps, again, these landscape coordinators coordinate with the champions and kind of take things forward. Then we, like I said, we have a hotline number and a database management. So all the incidents that come in are recorded, and it's a elaborate database where we record who's the person who reported it, whose incident, who's agreed party, what has happened really. And some of the incidents do have longer narrations. Especially if a snow leopard is caught, or if there is a bear attack that has happened. So all sorts of incidents across Lahore, Spiti, and Kinnaur are being recorded. And this just also gives us a trajectory of how, and especially in what is the seasonality of incidents. So we have some idea that around April and May, very high, threat situations. And also the landscape, where are more incidents coming out from. And so pretty much that. And another important point that comes out of this database is how many people are kind of getting their relief from the forest department. So everybody whose livestock gets attacked by a wildlife is entitled to compensation from forest department. But unfortunately, people don't really know much about it. So that was one of the primary things that we were covering in the workshops. But there were also gaps with, fulfilling that kind of commitment from the forest department. So we are also trying to keep a track of how many people get their compensations and how many don't, and what are the next steps that you can take. things like that. And we also, our team always ensures that we at least in a year 4 or 5 times we go and visit these landscapes, visit the communities, talk to people, talk to even other stakeholders. So that has been some of the things that we have been doing actively from our team's end, and for the champions and for the maintaining the champions network. um, there have been challenges because over the years already had a set of very dedicated people, and adding to that a lot more people from other landscapes also really meant that our teams had to step up and keep up with the growing network. And just the act of keeping in touch on regular basis with some of our champions meant that you had to take out time specifically and talk to them, know about, and it doesn't always have to be work, right? So that is something that we are a little bit struggling with, but our teams have been doing much better now. Initially we had that struggle, and I think right now, because we have been visiting a lot more people, and our champions also have grown over the last 3 years, and they understand much more better what they did before. So it's really it's really reduced, and also we have been getting better at it. Women, however, we have not been able to involve as much as we wanted to. Women in the landscape, although very active and very uh, you know very out there, and vocal for conservation issues, for the landscape, for water, for soil management, uh, unfortunately kind of fail to own these spaces where there are decisions being made or meetings are being held. But we have been pushing women to be part of this, if not directly as champions, or directly as these kind of champions, maybe through other ways, if we can kind of involve them as much. However, unfortunately, it's not so much with champions network to involve much women. Right now we have 2 women who are there, but we're definite that we, if we push a little bit more, we can get more women. But yeah, it's just been a little little bit of a challenge. Yeah, and motivation. A lot of people. We might hold a workshop for 10 people, but just 2 might remain. So there has been a lack of motivation. Some of them eventually come back as well. Because and there are multiple reasons for it. Motivation could be because your landscape doesn't have as much conflict, so you don't really have the need to talk to people, or you just purely not interested, you misunderstood what what the whole thing was, and you join it and you're not interested and you move out. And just purely motivation, over time you kind of lose interest and things are not happening, sometimes because you apply for compensations and you don't get those back, you don't get the money. That kind of discourages people from also continuing. So that is something that we are working with, and again, it's something that we'll have to keep chasing. We'll have to keep working with the people and see how it goes. But a lot of our work also, our regular engagements kind of help with this a little bit. As regular we are, as how frequently we are able to visit, kind of really pushes them also. So yeah, there are ways around it, but also it's something that again we'll have to keep working with. What has worked, like I said, regular engagements. We ensure we, either, so when we started this, it was bang before the COVID, and even COVID started, we all realized that this was even more important for people to be very locally placed as well. So because our teams couldn't travel anymore. So yeah, so with that, we have tried to ensure that even when once the COVID kind of took back and we were able to travel, we have regular engagements. Uh, Before that, we tried to meet over phones, Zoom calls, and some of our champions also had to. And like I said, there was no network a few years prior. So people had to travel to a different spot, get that network, talk to us in middle of winter, come back, 3-4 kilometers away. So it was quite a commitment from their side as well. And we had tried to keep up with that. Um, then one-on-one discussions. Most of our trainings and workshops are, in a group. But when really you have that one-on-one connection with person and you talk to them and you discuss things with them, give them that importance, that is when it clicks for them. And that has really worked for us as well. When we have seen a spark, we have really pushed and talked to them as often as we can, and have those one-on-one, especially when we visit the community, just meet with them first. Yeah. And that really helps with building that confidence and trust with each other. And that has worked. Our responsiveness, if I don't remember an incident where we have champions have reached out and we have not done anything about it. Even if we have tried to help over telephones or, ensured some sort of wrestle to them, but we have always tried to be as responsive. If it's definitely, if it's a big incident of a big issue that's happened, we kind of make sure our teams go. But we have also been very available over phones and WhatsApp for our communities. Yeah, and over the years, we have identified certain areas, and with the help of our champions who have, and we have been able to work with the community and build those interventions in place, like we had promised to them earlier. And keeping up with that and keeping up with those interventions is something that they also felt important. Like that is something that they promised to the community and we kind of delivered, and which was something that, again, it's really building those trusts between the champions and ourselves and champions and the community. So that has worked. So around 2021, 22 is when we were wondering that who are our champions. And apart from this group that we were trying to build and create, we realized that everybody who's working with us, who know of our work, or who could act in some way at the time of distress, especially in conflict situations, was really our champion and was something we were kind of missing out on before. So what we realized that, yeah, community members and herders who we are working with are our champions, but also the teachers we're engaging with, the writers. This is for Himkatha, and some of the writers were, talking about these issues. And we realized that they are as much champion as the ones we have been training. There were artists who were, doing artwork for our newsletter, for our pages. And these guys were also, very familiar with the work, with wildlife, wanted to do much for the communities. Yeah, these were also people who we could just call and be like, hey, we need your help with this. So yeah, so these have been some of our core champions. And we're also looking at, building this research capacity within the communities, where and especially women, because that's a group we have not been able to engage as much. So to build the capacity of within the women groups to do more say monitoring work or surveys, especially during winters when they're much more available and they have time. So maybe those could be our future champions that we are looking at. Youth groups or youth from the community, again, very dedicated approach to them is something that we can, take in the future. Other NGOs who know of our work, who are also championing our work outside, and sometimes even without, without us having to tell them. So those people are also as much of our champions as anybody else. Forest department and media are a tricky bit. We have really dedicated people in the forest department who are very very promising, very good at what they do, very community oriented. But what sometimes it's really dependent on the situation. In our area, some places it's not very good rapport. Communities share that with the forest department. So it's something that we always take a call that, can we involve them right now or should we wait for it? Things like that. They do champion our work. They are very supportive in some parts. But we do that with a little bit of a caution and seeing where we are going, what is the information we need from the community, is it sensitive, can this wait, things like that. So we have kind of worked with them closely as well, but it's something that we do very cautiously. Media, yes, some there are media persons who come and talk to us and want to know more of our work, championing the cause. Again, it's a tricky bit, and that's a story that I've covered earlier as well. So media is something that we really, again, do with a lot of caution, and only if we are fully, trusting and we know that the story will be, covered more sensitively, is something that we only then we kind of really trust these industries. So interventions with the help of champions, we have quite a few, and because of our champions network, we have been able to really take forward some of the interventions. Some of them tried, some of them not. Like, for example, the coral reinforcement is something that we have already tried in Spiti, and we know it works, and we tried other places as well across the other countries as well. So it's something that we know it works, but because of the champions network, we have been able to work for newer designs relevant to that landscapes. And that could happen only because we had very close understanding of the need of the community, and that was because of the champions. So newer designs, because of the champions, we have worked on very early on in the process of making these champions, or creating this network. We realized that we didn't have something kind of an SOP types where people knew what to do in situations. So we came up with this booklet called Vanya Jeevan. Vanya Jeevan translates into forest life, where basically this booklet talks about, if you're in the forest, how do you keep yourself safe? How do you keep your animals safe? What do you do to claiming forest department compensations? So so on and so forth. And champions really rely on this booklet to get information when they need it, and different topics when that they need. So that was, again, because champions asked for this kind of information, and we realized that there's something concrete about it. We kind of came up with this booklet. The local newsletter, like I said, there are writers who are our champions, artists who are our champions. So local newsletter, which is Himkatha, it tries to cover the local stories around nature and people and their relationship. And many contributors are our champions. Actually, they have been contributing. All the contributors become our champions. So they have been contributing very actively, many of them. And they also help us with the distribution. So in some areas, we can just rely on sending out the newsletter to them, and we know that they'll take it forward within the communities, within their villages. So that distribution, we kind of completely rely on them and their network. And we have also been able to, last 1 year, 1.5 years, also take out, do some interventions around education and outreach. Outreach we have been doing, but education is something that we started only last year. And we have engaged champions for that work as well, and they have been very, forthcoming for uh, handling some of the local logistics, ensuring permissions are in place, the things like that. And they have been very helpful in taking some of that work also forward. So this is the Vanya Jeevan booklet that I've been talking about. It was done with the help of Forest Department and local communities. There was really, all the stakeholders coming in and building this booklet. And it also has all the relevant forms that people need to fill and directions and everything that one needs to know about keeping your livestock safe and or mitigating for the loss is there in this booklet. This is the Himkatha website. We also have the print versions. We print it in Hindi and English. And we are, and we have a website for our outside, people, and even a lot of people locally are also consuming newsletter now because of, thanks to network and connectivity, we are consuming over phones and over websites and stuff. So this, and the artwork that you see is one of the artists, local artist, who has been doing artwork with us for a very long time. He's just brilliant. And if you see the page, you will see more of his art there. This is a chorale work that we have been doing in one of the I think this is Langza. So again, because of our champions network, we have been able to reinforce, and this is a new design. This earlier we have smaller chorales for individuals. This was a community chorale, so we had to come up with a new design, and we worked with the communities. We worked with some of our friends in SLT as well to kind of build this design, and it was a very collaborative effort. Usually how we get this done is also that we provide the material and the communities come together and kind of build it. So again, this was from start to the end, the whole process was very collaborative. And this is some of the outreach work. This is the exhibition that is being held in a place called Nako in Kinnaur. And these were some of the school children that we kind of especially got them for this exhibition. Champions helped out with all the logistics here, ensuring everything. It was a 2-day exhibition, so everything that we needed was there. So that kind of support that we can absolutely rely on, it just comes because we have been engaging with these people for a very long time. So what we expected, and and some unexpected outcomes. So definitely we wanted increased awareness of our work, of options instead of retaliating towards snow leopard. What are the other options that communities could opt for, put in place preventive and mitigative measures. So that kind of awareness we are seeing much more in these landscapes. And also awareness around what are their rights in case there are animals which are killed. So that is again something that we wanted, and we are kind of seeing that much more in these places. Our teams, definitely there is a lesser pressure on them to always travel to these places, even for the smallest things. So that way there's a much lesser pressure, and our teams are able to focus on more things, especially around research, and also dedicate more time to visiting these communities, just and wider communities, wider range. So that has been possible only because of Champions Network. Communities are much more trusting, and we have been able to push for our some of our interventions in this landscape at much higher speed than we were able to do 5-6 years ago. So that way we have communities more trusting in us, and there's a faster turnaround with them. And there's something that we did not expect is that many of these champions, like I said, they wanted to work with the communities. And now that they have been working in the communities, and people generally respect them and give them that importance because they've helped them at the time when they needed it the most. There is a sense of pride that is coming with working with this and working with the community, and that is something that has been very unexpected, and people talk very proudly of their work, which was quite nice and heartening to hear and see. Certain things that we have plans for future, like I said, we want to work about more with the women champions, involve them in other processes. Like I earlier mentioned about, doing some research or monitoring work with them when they're most available. That way they become our champions. Many women have been writing for Himkatha. So of the 81 writers that we have currently in for Himkatha, we have about 40, half of them about women. So that's a very healthy number, and we want that to continue, and more women to come out and shine, be part of conservation as much as we like them, and because this is a space that they really own, but it's just that they don't have they're not able to talk about it as much. So that is one. Then we want to work with the forest department. Like I said, there are gaps in the forest department that are not being addressed, especially around forest department compensation. And this is really something that people bank on. If their livestock is being killed, they know that, okay, we have compensation for it. We don't have to do something to the animal or sonarbids that is trapped in a corral. We can release it. So that kind of thinking and that kind of shift that we are expecting people to have is going to come only when they have something more reliable, with something for them to lean on. And that is what we're trying to work with the forest department to fill up those gaps and ensure there is a timely response from their end as well. It's a large institution, and there are challenges with them as well, and it's not an easy task. A lot of the time people are not trusting, they do not inform the forest department. So that is again something that we have to continuously work with both the stakeholders and see how we can bridge that gap. And another thing with increased capacities and skills in the landscape with the champions, we are also we're pushing for these champions to be part of our, say, research work, camera trapping work. So with that, we hope that there is some sort of skill building that's happening. We're also looking at maybe actively involving or doing certain kind of workshops with them, which will help them build that capacity and be able to tap into opportunities that they might not have been able to. So that is something that we are looking at for the future and for our champions network in Himachal. Yeah, that's about it. So we have our partners, the Snow Leopard Trust, of course, Forest Department, the Conservation Leadership Program, and Chola funding that we receive for most of our work in the landscape, especially around the Champions Network. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you to all our participants, and of course to our facilitators, Deepshikha. That was so informative, and I think it gives people a basic set of good guidelines. So thank you so much for that. I think we all got a lot out of it today.
Yeah, thank you so much, actually. Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and thank you everybody for joining in. Yeah, really, it's been super talking to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you all soon.